just fresh off the family dinner table this week. So now as we've come together, we've eaten dinner at the table. You know, there's an unspoken rule, at least in the circles that I've been privileged to join. There's an unspoken rule about spouses, right? Yeah, you come to the Thanksgiving table or you come to any table, and there's this, the host or hostess is kind of arranging who sits where, and it's this bit of all right, husband A sits there, wife A, you sit right next to him, and then inevitably there's some sort of oddity about the table arrangement where you end up with husband D and wife D that aren't right next to each other, and then everybody kind of just, okay, you move over one, and okay, good. And I don't know, maybe it's the rebel inside of me. Maybe it's this, why do spouses have to sit next to each other? I said maybe it's the rebel. It doesn't sound romantic. But why? And here's what I've concluded. In some ancient practice, you sat next to the person you cared the most about. And so if spouses don't sit next to each other, well, that's a problem. And I'll keep my rebelness to myself. I'm fine. Let's sit next to each other. But what if we turn this just a little bit, at least philosophically, and say, instead of sitting next to the person you care about, or you care the most about, what if you begin to care the most about the person you sit next to? All right, let's just touch that one more time. Spouses aside, it's a beautiful thing. I surrender. But what if instead of aligning our life philosophically to sit next to the person we care the most about, what if we begin to care the most about the person that sits next to us? And that is to say that in my life and in our lives, we begin to care about the people that are within our reach. We literally decide that we will care the most about the other chair next to us. Harold Taw, he's a lawyer by profession, by training. He's taking a little bit of a break right now to write a book. A novel. He's a novelist there, but I learned his story this last month and thought, well, isn't that just something to talk about? This is Harold Taw's story. He currently lives in Seattle, and he's made arrangements with the local zoo there in Seattle to feed their goldies, their monkeys, on his birthday. And here's the story. This is his writing. I believe in feeding monkeys on my birthday. I've done it without fail for 35 years. When I was born, he says, a Buddhist monk living alone in the Burmese, rather a blind Buddhist monk living alone in the Burmese jungle, predicted that my birth would bring great prosperity to the family. But to ensure this prosperity, I was to feed monkeys on my birthday. He says, while this sounds a bit superstitious, the practice makes sense. On a day normally given over to narcissism, I must consider others and give nourishment to another living creature. I must care for someone else. The monk never meant for this ritual to be a burden. In the Burmese jungle, monkeys are as common as pigeons. He probably had to shoo them away from his sticky rice and mangoes. It was only in America, when I came, that feeding monkeys meant violating the rules. Dad and I would go to the zoo early in the morning, just the two of us. When the coast was clear, I would throw my contraband peanuts to the monkeys. I never had to explain myself until my 18th birthday. It was the first year I didn't go with my father. I went with my friends and arrived 10 minutes after the zoo gates closed. Please, I beseeched the zookeeper, I feed monkeys for my family, not for me. Can't you make an exception? Go to the pet store, he said. If only it were so easy. That time I was lucky. He said, I found out that a high school classmate trained the monkeys for the movie Out of Africa, so he allowed me to feed his monkey. I've had other close calls. Once a man with a pet monkey suspected that my story was a ploy, that I was an animal rights activist about to liberate his monkey. Another time, a zoo told me that outsiders could not feed their monkeys without violating the zookeeper's collection bargaining agreement. In a pet store once, I managed to feed a monkey being kept in a bird cage. And another time, I was asked to wear a biohazard suit to feed a laboratory monkey. It's rarely easy, and yet somehow I've found a way to feed a monkey every year since I was born. Our family has been blessed. I believe that this prosperity has come from observing this ritual. Literally? No. But the idea of honoring my family by helping someone else. I believe in feeding monkeys on my birthday. Well, so we don't buy the prediction. But Harold Ta's point is valid. What if my life, and to highlight it on a day that is all about me, I in turn seek to be a benefit to someone else in the chair next to me? Not to align my chair with the person I care the most about, but to align my caring with the person that's next to me. Let's go to our Bible narrative. Open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 18. Grab your Bibles, Genesis chapter 18. Genesis and chapter 18, starting in verse 1. Then the Lord appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre, verse 1 of 18, as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. Now Moses just totally gives this away because Abraham didn't know it was the Lord. And it just kind of plays itself out here. But Moses just tells us, hey, then the Lord appeared to him by the terebinth trees. Sometimes I wish that the Bible wouldn't give us all the details or kind of the spoilers. But 3 men are coming down the road. Abraham is sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. It's too hot to sit outside. It's too hot to be in the tent. So he's kind of in the shade of the tent where he can still catch a little bit of a wisp, a breeze. It's too hot to do anything. It's just kind of just take a rest. So he's sitting there. He lifts his eyes, verse 2, and looked. And behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground. It's the heat of the day. And at some point, they're coming down the road, and they pause together, these 3 men, as almost sort of okay, what should we do? Should we take the road down to the right or continue straight? Should we... A bit of a pause there, almost as if they're debating what they should do next. And Abraham jumps up and runs. Now, those of you that have reflected on the Bible stories automatically know that, wait a minute, that is something... That's the whole point of the prodigal son parable that Jesus told when he says, look, the son, this prodigal son that left and spent everything he had, he's coming back, and when his father sees him from afar, he runs. The whole catch. It trips us in the story that a man of this culture would run. Abraham jumps up and runs. Not only is it the heat of the day, but he's the patriarch. He doesn't run, but he runs from the tent door to meet them, and he bows himself to the ground and says, "My Lord, if I have now found favor in your sight, do not pass on by your servant." He sees their debate. Hey, should we go? Should we? No. Please. Verse 4, "Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will bring you a morsel of bread, and you may refresh your hearts. After that, you may pass by inasmuch as you have come to your servant." And they said, "Do as you have said." So Abraham, what's that next word? So Abraham hurried. He's still running. He runs to meet them. He runs back. He hurries to the tent to Sarah and says, "Hey, quick, I've invited some friends home after church." Not a bad idea, actually. "I've invited some folks passing by to come in and eat. Quick, make ready 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make some cakes." And then Abraham, verse 7, ran. He's still running. It speaks to the imperative, to the opportunity that Abraham wants to serve them, and he's thrown his energy into it. Abraham ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, gave it to a young man, and he hastened to prepare it. So he took butter and milk and the calf which he had prepared and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree as they ate. Abraham, this patriarch, this wealthy ruler, as it were, of his clan. And he runs, and he runs, and he runs, and he himself goes and selects the tender and good calf. And then it's prepared and set before them. Verse 9, then they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" So he said, "Here, she's right behind us in the tent." And he said, "I will certainly return to you according to the time of life. And behold, Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." Sarah was listening in the tent door, which was behind him. Here's a dinner table. Abraham throws the best they have, tablecloth, the china, throws it all out. They've got 3 forks and 2 spoons and a knife and a half. It's just laid out for them. 3 strangers walking by his tent. And Abraham says, "I'm going to care for the person closest to me." So he lays it out for them. Now we can write this off as some ancient culture of hospitality. Come on, it was Abraham's. That was his thing. Okay. But let me remind you that Abraham received the greatest blessing of his life from this moment. He could have allowed these guests to pass on, but he takes this step out. He runs. The running just speaks to this is not just culture. This is something else going on. Because if it was just culture, he would have just said, "Hey, gentlemen, please join me. Hey, guys, snap, snap, snap. Please bring them in and get a good calf." But the running, the repetition, just over and over and over, Abraham running, says this wasn't culture. He's stepping out of culture. And then from this, God turns to Abraham and says, "Abraham, I am going to give you the promise in a year because of your hospitality, because of your willingness to step out, break what would be accepted in culture." This isn't just culture. This is something different. So he feeds them. God gives them this promise. You know that, your eyes have drifted down. Sarah, in verse 12, laughs within herself because she's old, he's old. And then God says, hey, why are you laughing? And in that moment, she begins to realize, wait a minute, this is something special here. And she begins to become afraid at the realization that she has laughed at God. And God, he's all right. He's a big enough God to handle that. But the biggest blessing of their life, you ask Sarah and Abraham, the biggest blessing of their life came from Abraham breaking away from what it was accepted and reaching out to care for the person that was somebody he didn't even know. Finds out, in fact, he did know them. Just had no idea. Finds out that this is in fact God with two angels walking by his house. Abraham would have missed it, would have never known if he was just protected. Well, this is the way we do things in my culture. No. If Abraham protected himself and stayed within culture, he would have missed not only a personal interaction with God himself, but he would have missed the greatest promise of his life. I'm going to be back in a year to give you a son. And then God stays by. It's fascinating. God stays by. In verse 22, the men, the two that were with God, turned away from there and went toward Sodom because that was their whole mission. They were headed down to bring judgment. But Abraham still stood before the Lord. So three of them come, but God says, guys, go ahead without me. I'm going to stay and spend some one-on-one time with Abraham. And so God takes this extra time, all of which would have been missed if Abraham had just kind of maintained culture and expectations. I wonder, sure, the hospitality was there, but I wonder if God would have really stayed if Abraham wouldn't have gone out of his personal way to reach out to him. He could have sent a servant, sure, and one would have been off. A couple more claps, that good and tender calf would have been picked, a couple more. But Abraham took it upon himself. So this is mine. And God stays and spends some personal time with him. There's a lot of passages in Scripture that just speak to hospitality. But not just general hospitality around the holiday, do some Thanksgiving baskets. But this idea that you live your life realizing that you are coming into interaction with created beings of God. This is huge. Let me just throw a text here on the screen for you. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2. Do not forget to entertain strangers. Again, do not align your chair closest to those you care about, but rather care about the person that's closest to you. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing, some have unwittingly entertained angels. Think about that. Think about your life. Now, I'm just 37 years of life here that I can wrestle with. But I can remember, I can note times in my life when I kind of had an inclination, just a gumption to say something to someone, to invite someone, but I was nervous. It's not my culture to just walk up to a stranger and say, hey, why don't you come eat at my house tonight? Nothing special, no holiday. Love to have you. It's not our culture. We don't talk to strangers. We'll sit on sit on planes next to each other. Even in the duration that I've been flying, it used to be that there was an expected exchange between the person that sat next to you. Literally, now I've been on flights where I have not said a single word or gotten a single word said to me in an entire 3-hour flight with the person that I'm rubbing literally my elbow with. Well, it's okay. That's perfectly okay. Well, maybe okay isn't okay. Because if Abraham had gone with okay, he would have missed an exchange with not only an angel, but God himself. Don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to entertain strangers, for by doing, some have unwittingly entertained angels. Now, the catch here is that you may do the entertaining, the guest may come, and the stranger may leave, and you will never know until you walk into heaven and see that same person now as an angel. Wait. It's not that you're going to have some revelation at your dinner table. I am an angel. Oh, well, I'm glad I caught you. No, it's that they could literally eat at your table and leave, and you never know that they're an angel. Apparently, even angels want to have face-to-face exchanges with us. Maybe it's on their side, or maybe it's just a test for us. I don't know. But the Bible's clear. Listen, there are opportunities that you better not miss. Keep reading Psalm 91 and verse 11. For he shall give his angels charge over to keep you in all your ways. The Bible teaching is that, in fact, we have guardian angels, angels that look over us. I have this little theory that angels are recycled. You know, angels that maybe David's guardian angel or Daniel's guardian angel or Joseph's guardian angel or Abraham's guardian angel or Sarah's guardian angel get recycled. They don't need them anymore, right? They're resting, waiting for the resurrection. And so now these angels can take on new, I don't know what they call them, patients, friends, contracts. I don't know how they can, students. But they can have new assignments. And maybe your angel is the same angel of Abraham and Sarah, but you have a guardian angel. And I wonder if those guardian angels just don't dream of sitting down with you and having dinner with you face to face, and you seeing them and them seeing you in this human. They are created beings as well. They're not divine. They're created beings. Maybe they enjoy the interaction. I wonder to myself, how many times could I have had the opportunity to have had lunch with my guardian angel? And because of culture, because it's just not what I do, it's not my personality, it's whatever. And then the Bible gets really serious. Jesus actually does. Matthew chapter 18. He says, listen, take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones, talking about the children. Do not despise these little ones. For I say to you that in heaven, their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. That speaks to how we should treat another created being. You could argue especially the children. But it speaks to the fact that these angels are going back and forth, and they're saying, look, they're just, the Christians of today are just following the culture of their day, and they're reporting back to God saying, God, they're not nice. Or you wouldn't believe it, he broke culture and he ran out of his way to be hospitable, to entertain a stranger, to bring a stranger not to just a restaurant, hey, I'll buy you lunch, but to his table. Here, you sit, please, stranger, sit with me. These angels are going back and forth, reporting about how things are going here. And I am convinced that this little narrative of this supper is not just a by statement in script, not just a, hey, by the way, Abraham had dinner, invited some guests, but watch what happens. It's the same story is repeated again with the two angels that go down to Sodom. Go back to your Bibles, Genesis, now we're in 19, Genesis chapter 19. Remember, the Lord is still up on the hill talking to Abraham. They have this incredible, fascinating little dialogue about Abraham's pleading, interceding for Sodom. And he's saying, hey, can you save it if there's so many and so many and so many? And so they have this little prayer. But meanwhile, the two angels are now down in Sodom. And Sodom is this luxurious, just rich, both with culture, but with agriculture, with prosperity. It's just rich. And now the two angels, verse 1 of chapter 19, now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening. All right, so they had lunch with Abraham. And they had a cake of fine flour. They had the butter, you read it, the milk and butter that was prepared with that fine calf. They've had a really nice lunch. And now they're at evening time. They're down in Sodom. And picking up in the middle of verse 1. And Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. Sound familiar? Yeah. Just happened up on the mountain. And he said, here now, my lords, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go on your way. They made no indication that they were looking for a place. He had to interrupt them, as it were. Look, I see you're passing through, but let me stop you. Please come to my house, get rested, and then you can keep going. Spend the night, wash your feet, then you may rise early and go on your way. And they said, no, but we will spend the night in the open square. Apparently that was okay. That was culturally, this is what we do. We just get a hotel. That's the safe thing to do. You don't know us, we don't know you, we'll just get a hotel. So check out, the stories are very similar, but there's one nuanced difference. Abraham said, hey, can I feed you lunch? Can you rest at my place? Yes, just as you've said. But now the angels are down in Sodom, and Lot says the same thing. He's bowed himself the same way, and this time they say, no. Verse 3, but he insisted strongly. Oh, if only the Bible had left us off with Abraham, because Abraham says, hey, will you come? And their next answer is acceptable. We could write it off and say, hey, when I go to invite somebody and I make an invitation and they initially reject me, well, that's their business. God has only asked me to extend an invitation, and now that the invitation is extended and they rejected it, I'm free. The problem is that Lot's story does not happen that way. They say no, and Lot says, I need you to come. I insist. I won't go back to home. I won't go without you. Oh, Lot. So much easier when we can just make the invitation, and when it's rejected, fine. But at least I was righteous. But apparently it's not just that. Because Lot insists. He insisted strongly, matter of fact. So they turned into him and entered his house. Then he made them a feast, baked unleavened bread, and they ate. He made them a feast, beloved. Apparently angels have a good appetite, because they just ate a big lunch up at Abraham's house, and now they're down there, and he makes them a feast. They've eaten a big lunch and a big dinner. It's Thanksgiving for these angels. He makes them a feast, and they spend the night at his house. The catch is that in both of these circumstances, the greatest blessing of their lives come from their hospitality. For Abraham and Sarah, the promise of a son is given. For Lot, his life is spared because he insisted on hospitality. Tell me then, hospitality can just be willy-nilly with culture. Hospitality, according to these two narratives, is at least in some sense salvific. It saved their lives. How we act, how we treat others then becomes just a little bit more important. Who's in the chair next to you? That we philosophically must begin to care the most about and not just align our chair with the person we care the most about. There's a paragraph from the book Patriarchs and Prophets. I want to read you the entire paragraph because it is just saturated with powerful lines. I typically don't try to do paragraphs, just a line here. So I tried to cut, and I said, well, can't cut that one. That needs to go back. Like, ooh, can't cut that one. And pretty soon we have the whole paragraph back. I tried to go to Patriarchs and Prophets. Lot, this is commentary on this story. Lot did not know their true character, but politeness and hospitality were habitual with him. They were a part of his religion. Amelia, you can just leave that on the screen for just back up to that. It was a part of his religion. It was habitual. Like feeding monkeys on my birthday. It's not always easy. Certainly not in this country. I wouldn't know where I would start if I had to feed monkeys on my birthday. It's not easy, but it's habitual. And it's a part of his religion. Lot says, this is just who I am. It's a part of my deep-seated belief. Let's keep reading now. Lessons that he had learned from the example of Abraham. No surprise there. We just picked that up a minute ago. Abraham had taught Lot, listen, this is the way we act. And so when it came to Lot, he insisted strongly. Had he not cultivated a spirit of courtesy, he might have been left to perish with the rest of Sodom. Many a household, in closing its doors against a stranger, has shut out God's messenger who would have brought them blessing and hope and peace. Wow! These aren't friends, beloved. I'm not talking about friends. I'm talking about somebody across the church, somebody across town, somebody across the way that you don't even know. Many has shut out God's messenger who would have brought them blessing and hope and peace. Every act of life, however small, has its bearing for good or for evil. Faithfulness or neglect in what are apparently the smallest duties may open the door for life's richest blessings. It did for Abraham and Sarah, it did for Lot, or its greatest calamities. Keep reading. It is little things that test the character. It is the unpretending acts of daily self-denial performed with a cheerful, willing heart that God smiles upon. We are not to live for ourselves, feeding monkeys on our birthday, but for others. And it is only by self-forgetfulness, by cherishing a loving, helpful spirit, that we can make our life a blessing. The little attentions, the small, simple courtesies go far for making up the sum of life's happiness. And the neglect of these constitutes no small share of human wretchedness. Beloved, I have no problem sitting next to my wife. It is the privilege. But what if we, instead of always trying to align our chairs next to the person we care the most about, begin to care the most about the person in the chair next to us? Anywhere and everywhere. It seems to be that was the religion of Abraham, who personally talked to God. God says, hey, angels, go ahead, finish our little mission here. I'm going to stay and talk to my friend Abraham. And they stayed and talked. And I would guess, since the two angels ate dinner down with Lot, that in fact God stayed long enough to eat dinner with Abraham. It's a part of his religion. This wasn't just a Thanksgiving. Hey, it's the holiday season. Let's make food baskets. As good as that is. It's the holiday season. Let me go out of my way. But it became a part of his religion, beloved. And who did he learn it from? Lot. He learned it from Abraham. There's one more story. There's one more story I want to read you. This one's been passed around social media, so you might have caught it. I want to read you this story. It's the story of 4-year-old Nora. Her mother, Tara Wood of Augusta, Georgia, was with two of her kids on a routine trip to the grocery store. Nora, her daughter, her 4-year-old daughter, it was her birthday. That's when they ran across Dan Peterson, known as Mr. Dan. As Mr. Dan walked by, Nora, smiled and waved. "Hi, old person. It's my birthday." He stopped in his tracks and smiled and said, "Well, hello, little lady. How old are you today?" She chatted for a couple of minutes and we went our separate ways. I think there's a picture. We can throw them up on the screen here for you. There's little Nora, Mr. Dan in the grocery store. A few minutes later, Nora decided she really wanted a picture with Mr. Dan. So we had to track him down back in the grocery store. He said, Mr. Dan said, "I just walked away and then I was coming up the bread aisle and I said, okay, this is almost my last aisle before I get out of here. And then there was the little girl again. And so they posed together and they hugged each other like they were long-lost friends. Tara Wood thanked him for his time. He teared up and said, "No, thank you. This has been the best day I've had in a long time. You've made me so happy, Miss Nora." Mr. Dan described Nora on that day as a light that just lit me up. They went their separate ways. Gone. Tara Wood, mom, little Nora, was so touched by the exchange that she went home and posted the photos on Facebook. Not only did she receive thousands of instant reactions, that's also when something special happened. A friend of Mr. Dan reached out, seeing the picture, to let Wood know that his wife had just died and she hadn't seen him this happy in a long time. She knew Mr. Dan and his late wife, Mary. She was the key to us getting in touch, said Tara Wood, this friend who saw my pictures on Facebook and then said, "Hey, wait a minute, I know that guy," got the two back in touch. So, Mr. Wood said, "I got this phone call, and the first question that the voice asked on the other end is this the Dan that talked to a little girl in the grocery store? Come on, this is breaking protocol of culture. We don't do this." Yes, he said. "Are you talking about the little girl Nora that had her 4th birthday?" "Yeah, that's exactly who we are." Little conversation. The Woods decide to pay Mr. Dan a visit. He agrees. They came to my house, and sure enough, little Nora, he says, grabbed me and hugged me like there was no tomorrow. Nora brought him a framed picture of the two of them in the grocery store. Pictures she colored and he put up on his refrigerator, and a bag full of pastries and Butterfingers. I have a picture of the two of them now. Here's Nora and Mr. Dan. After going over to visit him, Wood said, Nora asked to visit Mr. Dan after school every single day. While they don't go every single day, they make a point to call him at least once a week, and they definitely went over to help him celebrate his 82nd birthday. Then Mr. Dan says it was one of those days, reflecting on the day he was in the grocery store, that I'm on my own little private pity party. I'm feeling sorry for myself and doubting my beliefs, and it's obviously changed my opinion that day. And he says, the encounter obviously changed my opinion that day and lifted my spirits to heights that I hadn't known for a long time. Mr. Dan made sure to let the Wood family know. He said that he hadn't had an interrupted night of sleep for the past several months. Sadness and anxiety had made his mind wander at night. But since meeting Nora, he has slept soundly every single night. And maybe that's an answer to a little sleep. He said, Nora has healed me. I want you to catch these last lines. About Nora, Mom says, mostly She just cares about his well-being and his heart. She wants him to be happy. I guess that's what friends are supposed to do, huh? And Mr. Dan summed up this line of his new friend. He said, if I didn't have anything else to do the rest of my life, I have her to love. And it's that last line that I'd like to call your prayerful attention to. Instead of always aligning your chair next to the person you care the most about. There's little Nora sleeping. They say she sleeps every night with the framed picture. Mr. Dan. But instead of always making sure you just sit next to the person you care the most about, what if you begin to care the most about the person in the next chair? And as little Nora has taught us, it's not just the dinner table, it's the grocery carts as they pass each other. It's your workstation, it's your play station, it's your business, it's your neighborhood. What about that neighbor? What about the person on that public transportation? What about the person in the car next to you that you may never be able to share a word with, but you can send the silent smile? What if it's this last line? Angel or no angel? We may not know for time and now that they were in fact an angel, but what if that family, that coworker that lives next to you or that works next to you or that even goes to church next to you, what if they're not just another human, but they are a created angel that reports back to the Father? So what about this last line? Angel or no angel? What if the person in the chair next to you in life, or in the car, or in the house, or the cubicle, or the office, or wherever it is, could say, I don't know if I'll have anything else to do the rest of my life, but I feel loved, and I have someone to love. Come on, that's not our culture. Our culture is germ, hands-free, don't get too close. It's not safe. Have you heard what's going on in the world, Pastor? Yeah, I've heard what's going on. I read the news. But what if? What if the angel of the person that's next to you reports back to God and says, God, I want you to know something. My guy, my gal is loved by one of our own. Who can be at your dinner table that's not? Who should be at your dinner table that's not? I'd like to invite the musicians up. If you're a guest here at Campion, if you're a first-time guest, we have a Connect card in the pew in front of you. That's, if you mark, hey, I'm a guest, this is my first time visiting, or I'm just visiting, you mark that. We've got a little gift we want to drop you in the mail. If you want to make a decision, if you know that Jesus has been talking to you and you need, maybe it's just sitting down with someone and talking to them about how you can live a life outside of yourself, feeding monkeys, as it were, on your birthday. Living a life of the religion that Lot had and that Abraham had, entertaining strangers, angels or not, entertaining strangers. Maybe you just want to talk about that. Maybe there's a prayer request. You transfer your membership. You want to make a decision for Jesus. You have not made a decision for Jesus, to live for Him, to publicly being baptized, saying, I'm a disciple of Jesus. You can use that Connect card for all the above. Or that Connect number. You see that number, 970-541-9919. You text your decision. I'm a guest. You text your information there. You text your prayer request there. We want to connect. We want to continue to grow. This is not about a nice little time Sabbath morning. We want to connect as a community to change the community we live. As the ushers will collect our tithes and offerings, they'll also collect those connect cards. So you're welcome to turn one in, drop it in the offering bags as they come by. As we together sing this very Thanksgiving festive song, Rejoice, ye pure in heart. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. And so it is, O Father, as we've returned our very tithes and offerings to you, may we return the spot at our dinner tables, the opportunity to show the world the religion of heaven. Amen.